Everyone, and welcome to our mock live class today. My name is Kate Deering. I am an assistant director for recruitment and admissions at Geese Online at the University of Illinois' Geese College of Business. I look forward to spending the next hour or so with you all. Our time today will be spent providing you with an opportunity to understand how live classes are delivered and also have a chance to interact with this high engagement component of Geese Online programs. Before we dive into today's session, though, I wanted to provide a brief overview of the credentials that are available at Geese for those that may be new to our programs. At Geese, we offer 3 online master's degree programs, the IMBA, the IMSA, and the IMSM, along with 13 graduate certificates that are all stackable into Geese Online master's degrees. Geese Online graduate programs are innovative, they're affordable, they're designed to be fully online and very flexible for full-time working professionals. We're excited today that you are going to experience a live session from 2 of our very talented faculty members and then be able to get a glimpse into what kind of content is shared within Geese. Our courses do balance foundational material shared on the Coursera platform with an interactive high engagement component as well. This interactive aspect includes a weekly 90-minute live class, along with various other opportunities for learning, such as group projects, office hours, networking, and the privilege of being part of the esteemed University of Illinois community. Before we get started learning today about leadership as empowerment and knowing yourself in the process, I want to cover a few housekeeping items. I do see that some of your cameras are turned on. Thank you for doing that. I do encourage all of our attendees to activate your cameras so that we can engage with each other, just as if we were in a live weekly class together. Please note that all participants are muted to minimize background noise during this session. However, if Professors Keating and Luckman invite you to participate, our technical team will unmute your microphone for you. If you have any questions, please utilize the raise hand feature and we will call on you. We will have one breakout session today, which will allow you to participate with your fellow session attendees. And then lastly, we invite you to feel very comfortable participating in the chat. Feel free to interact with the professors and other attendees regarding the live class material. We will also save time for your questions at the end of the session. I'm so excited to have 2 of our top leaders with Geese Business teaching us today. In this mock class, we are going to explore the concept of leadership as social process of empowering others. Professors Keating and Luckman will highlight the key competencies that leaders can develop to succeed in today's business environment, while also advancing the notion that effective leadership starts with the self. Kari Keating is an award-winning educator who joined the Geese College of Business faculty in 2020. She teaches courses in leadership, teamwork, and business in action. Kari's work is focused on helping learners develop their leadership capacity as emotionally intelligent change makers in organizations and communities. Prior to Geese, Kari served as a director of the campus-wide minor in leadership studies in the College of Aces at Illinois. She also holds Kari holds a bachelor's degree in marketing from Bradley University, a master's in educational psychology from the University of Iowa, and a PhD in human and community development from the University of Illinois. Elizabeth A. Luckman is an accomplished educator and coach with a drive for helping others to thrive in their professional lives. She currently works as a clinical assistant professor in business administration at the Geese College of Business, where she teaches courses at both the graduate and undergraduate levels on leadership, effective teamwork, and business operations. She serves as the academic director of the undergraduate management major and is a fellow of the Disruption Lab, which seeks to really push the boundaries of technology and education. Prior to her faculty role, she served as a lead postdoctoral fellow at the National Center for Principled Leadership and Research Ethics at the Granger College of Engineering. Elizabeth holds a bachelor's degree in English literature and classic civilizations from Wellesley College, an MBA from the Fisher College of Business at the Ohio State University, and a PhD from Olin School of Business at Washington University in St. Louis. So I know that was a lot of information, and we're so honored to have, as I said, 2 of our top faculty members here, and you can tell from their backgrounds, we're very lucky to have them here this evening. So I am going to turn it over to them for a fabulous mock live session tonight.
We're really excited to spend this next hour with you I'm super excited to spend this next hour.
I know, that's what I was just thinking. I'm
Professor
glad
Luckman.
they're all here, but I'm really glad we get to be here together. Normally when we teach remotely from our respective homes. And so once in a while we get to sit next to each other physically in the same space. And that is really amazing. So we are so excited that you've joined us tonight, and we offer this as a way to help you understand what our class sessions are like in our iDegrees programs, as Kate mentioned. And so let's dive right into it and help them see what we're going to do tonight.
All right. As we get started here, and you can take a look at our live session agenda, this is very much like a typical 90-minute class that we're going to squeeze into an hour. We'll have a poll coming up next. We're going to go over some definitions. You'll get a chance to be in a breakout room with one another.
And I want to speak to that real quickly because I just noticed Hamey, hello Hamey, is here. It's a previous student, someone who is currently in the programs, and so who has been through our class before. And one of the greatest pieces, elements of value that you get from our iDegrees programs is the network of people you get to connect with.
Absolutely.
So and I love that people are already saying where you're from, because this is what we do at the start of all of our classes. And I see lots of people from across the US. I saw 2 Singapores, I saw Vancouver, I saw the UAE, I saw Egypt. So a lot of the value comes from interacting with your peers, and you're going to get a chance to do that tonight. And some of those are folks who've already been through our course.
That's fantastic. Yes, that's there's the content and the professors, but there you all have each other. That's an enormous learning potential. We will cover self-awareness theory. We're going to cover a little bit of cognitive bias and decision making. We'll wrap up class with a second poll, and then take you all home. So what do you say we get started?
I think we should get started.
Right.
So one of the things we like to do in our live sessions is ask you to interact. And so because our live sessions can have anywhere from about 50 to 300 people on them at a time, one way to do this is through polls. So why are you interested in a class on leadership? What brought you to this mock class tonight? So we have a few options here. It looks like our team has launched the poll. So we're going to give it a couple of minutes. And part of the reason we start with this question is this is where we start with self-awareness. Why are you interested in this? Are you looking to get promoted in your current job or your current career? Are you interested in really defining the concept of leadership and trying to figure out what it means for you? Are you transitioning? Are you in between jobs? There are a lot of skills that are not just about the leadership roles, but rather the human dimensions of organizations and interacting with people in your teams.
Yeah, I want to, as our learners are responding to the poll, about 70 of you have participated. Let's get a few more in. When we teach this course in leadership in teams, I think some people walk into the course imagining, well, do I have to have a leadership title in my organization in order to get the most out of this class? The answer is no. That's wonderful if you do. There's a lot for you to learn. But if you're someone who is just starting a job, just getting into the world of work, or maybe you're volunteering in your community, you're in a transition phase, the concepts that are part of this course are for human development. So they're widely applicable no matter what stage of life you find yourself in.
In fact, the best time to learn some of these is about 5 or 6 years old, I think. That's really when you should start learning how to be an effective leader. So many of this, because it's related to human development, so much of what we'll talk about, we start learning it really early. So let's go ahead and close out our first poll and take a look. And I'm kind of delighted by this. So you can see there's a little bit of everything here, and there's a fairly even split for people who've been in management for a while, starting a new leadership role, wanting to emerge as a leader, to sort of show up in transition. But the fact that 32% of you said, I'm just curious, that's our favorite word.
That is our favorite
We talk
word.
about that. There's a whole module dedicated to curiosity and courage and commitment, because that is a way to frame the world that helps you learn no matter where you are. So it's regardless of what class you're taking or what job you're doing or what challenge you're facing, curiosity is really, really powerful. So I kind of love that really emerged at the top as one of the reasons people are here tonight.
I'm glad.
So great, and we do want to encourage you to continue to share questions and thoughts in the chat. Kate will be collecting some questions. We might try to get to some of them throughout our time here, but let's dive into some content.
All righty. And mentioning the chat, we want you to keep it lively there and go ahead and respond to us, because we can see your responses. We love to react to your responses, engage with you in a chat conversation, even during a live session. So let's just kick it off with sort of a soft toss question. What comes to mind for you when you think of the concept leadership? So you go ahead and type your responses in the chat. You know, this is such a loaded word.
Trust, collective,
Alberto,
showing
way to
the
go.
way, inspiring. Okay, they have it all figured out. They
right.
got it done.
And scene.
Open-minded. Wow. Okay, this is going really fast. We're testing how quickly I can read. Leading by example, inspire. Followership, knowledgeable.
Carlene says, reminds me of great leaders I've had throughout my life. You're going to have a chance to talk about that, Colleen, in just a few minutes in the breakout room.
Yep. Confidence and competence. Oh, I have a good story about that. I'm going to share it now. So this is another thing we do in our live sessions. Sometimes we deviate from topics. When we were little kids, my sister and I heard from our father that his approach to parenting is very similar to his approach to leadership. And for many of you who are parents, you might feel this as well. And he said that his job, he felt, was to instill confidence, competence, and independence in his kids. And now I think about that model of confidence, competence, and independence, and a lot of that is very closely related to people who are effective leaders as well. So there's a close connection between parenting and leadership.
We're on a develomental theme tonight. We didn't even plan that. But I'd like to, at this point, mention that we could spend a whole 8-week course talking about the history of leadership and leadership theory. So leadership as a field of study has been around for more than 100 years, starting out with theories such as the trait approach, or what was then called the great man theory. It moved next to the skills model of leadership, behavioral theories, the situational model. Maybe some of you have heard of these theories over the last several decades. Leader-member exchange, which discusses in-groups and out-groups and how to get everyone into the in-group. And then more modern theories of leadership, such as transformational theory, servant leadership, which many of you may have heard of, that really
I saw that pop up a couple times in the chat.
Awesome. Yep. That really centers the notion of leading as serving the followers, kind of the leaders eat last approach, if you will. And then probably the most contemporary theories of adaptive leadership, authentic leadership, which is about the self, really. And this is kind of the jumping off point for the content in this mock session, is about leadership as a process of first knowing yourself, because who you are is how you lead.
Yeah, so if you think about your interactions in the past with leaders you've worked for, or when you've been in a formal leadership position, and it doesn't even have to be a position of power, even working with others in a team, we are very quick to evaluate what's going on around us. That person's smart, that person's lazy, that person's contributing, that person's not. And it turns out that how we show up and what we bring to that environment is influencing how other people act. And that's why we always start with understanding the self. So you've all given us a lot of different ways to think about leadership, and we do have a section in our online Coursera massive online open course, the MOOC, which is a core part of our iDegrees programs, on sort of the history of leadership theory. But there are a lot of different ways to define leadership, and this is the one we use in the course. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about this and then unpack why we use this in our particular course. So for our definition, leadership is a socially constructed process in which an individual is either given or takes increased responsibility or accountability for empowering others to collectively solve problems in alignment with an organization or team's purpose. Now, it's a mouthful, but there's a reason we do this. And I'll back up a bit to say, how many of you can just say in the chat have heard leadership is the process of motivating others to achieve the leader's vision? This is a pretty common definition. So I really don't like that definition. And I really don't like it. Right? I get kind of angry about it. And the reason I don't like it is because when we talk about leadership as motivating others to achieve your vision, that's a model of control, right? Me motivating you to achieve my vision means I have all the answers, and my job is to try to goose you with incentives to get you to do what I need you to do. Well, that doesn't help you grow as a leader, and it really doesn't foster trust, which is one of the things that came up quite a bit in the definitions here. So the reason we use this definition is because you can break it down into parts that allow you to focus on your development. So Socially constructed process means that leadership is relational. You can't have a leader without a follower. So being a leader in isolation doesn't really mean anything. And in today's world, we have lots of complex problems that require teams of people to work together. So this relational piece and understanding how we influence each other is really important. And that can be, that's where the trust comes in, and that can be developed and practiced. An individual can either be given or take increased responsibility and accountability, right? If you can lead a 50,000 person organization, or you can pick up trash on the side of your road and model the behavior you want to see in others in that way. And both of those people are demonstrating the capacity of being an effective leader. Empowering others. This idea of the leader isn't the one with all the answers. The leader's job is to help facilitate others in doing their best work. And so helping others find their voice and to bring their value to the table is important. And then to collectively solve problems in alignment with purpose. One of the core findings on teamwork is that having a shared purpose or a shared goal is a core component of effective teamwork. And so leaders need to understand this. So when you start to break this down, now you can play and test and figure out where your gaps are and where you want to learn and grow. So that is one definition that we're going to think about. And we want you to use that definition as we send you out into your breakout room. And again, this is your opportunity to connect with people that you might not otherwise know. And so we've given you a couple of things to think about in this breakout room, and we're going to give you about 10 minutes for this. So first of all, we always invite people to take a minute and introduce yourselves, even if it's just where you're calling in from and why you're here and your name, something very quick just to build that connection. And then discuss the following prompts. Give an example of an effective leader and why you think that person is effective. And then, of course, on the opposite side, what's an ineffective leader? And explain why that leader is ineffective. So, and we always encourage people to think broadly about your examples. So you can think about specific people you've worked with or things you've seen, but don't shy away from movies and TV and pop culture and things like that, because that can really expand the conversation as well. Anything else before we send them into the breakout rooms?
I'm just also going to shout out Jessica's definition of leadership, which is to create other leaders. That sort of harkens back to the transformational approach. So thumbs up to that as well. Imran, I'm with you too. Yes, please. And oftentimes folks discuss leaders who are maybe in their own organization, in their own everyday lives, in their family. So it's cast a wide net in this leadership identification activity. And we'll see you back here in about 8 minutes to discuss what you talked about. Welcome back from your breakout discussion. I hope you met some new friends in the breakout room and had enough time. It never seems like enough time.
There's never enough time, but I also want to acknowledge the courage that it takes to go jump into a breakout room with people you don't know and have a conversation in 8 minutes.
Absolutely.
Congratulations. I am proud of all of you for doing that.
Yes.
And also we were sitting here watching you come back and just talking about how much we love seeing your faces. And so thank you for those of you that do have, I understand not everybody is camera ready at this time of day, depending on where you are.
Yes.
That's often my excuse, but it's lovely to see smiling faces. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having your cameras on. And Shoko, yes, that was probably a little bit too short for some folks, but this is the part in a typical live session where we will call on learners to tell us some major takeaways from the breakout discussion. What did you generate together? We asked you in this prompt to talk about effective leaders, ineffective leaders, why, maybe have a debate or discussion around that. So this is the part where we ask learners to raise their hand if you see the function on the Zoom bar down below to be able to raise your hand, and then we'll call on a couple of people and see how far we can get. But
so let's start with Mao. So we'd like to invite you, Mao, to unmute, and we'll get you unmuted here and hear what you had to talk about in your breakout room.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Hello. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. It's nice to be here. I'm very excited, and I would like to say that it's 4 a.m. here. So
You look great for 4 a.m. You look alive. You got so much energy.
That's courage,
Thank
right
you,
there.
thank you.
Speaking of courage.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that question again? I didn't catch
Yes. What did you talk about in your breakout room around leadership?
Okay. We were four individuals, and we shared our ideas about the role model. I think not the role model, but the people who are in our life, whom we are considered as a good represent of leadership, and the most important, we shared why we think that they are qualified leaders. We gathered some qualities as modesty, insight, motivation, and mentoring others. I think that's all. That's some it all.
That's wonderful.
That's
Thank you.
great, Mel. Thank you. It's sort of the 3M model of leadership.
Yeah.
Modesty, motivation. What was the third one?
Modeling.
Modeling. Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you, Mal, for sharing about that. And I think it plays so nicely into today's mock session, where in just a moment we'll be talking about self-awareness and how leadership starts, emotionally intelligent leadership starts with the self. And so it sounds like you all talked about role models and people in your life, irrespective of their title, who you can relate to, who you can trust. And research shows that in order to sustain a followership, it's not about your title or authority or having sort of positional or reward or coercive power, but having a sense of trust, role modeling, what we might call referent power. That's the kind of leadership that people sustain followership toward. So thank you for sharing what you discussed in your breakout room.
I also just want to call out Vivian's comment, so eloquently said, Mal, for being up at 4 a.m. And this is also a part of developing culture in an online environment. So recognizing what other people say and reacting to it. I'm seeing a lot of that in the chat. So I want to thank folks for that as well. I think we have time. This happens every time. We want to get through a bunch of people. We're going to pick one more for the sake of time. So I'm going to ask Erica to unmute and share with us what you talked about in your breakout room.
Hi, everyone. I am from Chicago, and it's 7:30 over here. So what we did talk about, basically, communication is a major key. How good leaders have to be active listeners. So as you mentioned, it shouldn't just be about control. Ineffective leaders basically feel like it's their way or the highway just because I'm the leader. Good leaders, they definitely have good integrity, problem-solving skills, give feedback, they're motivational, create mentorship for people. I also do believe they have more of a bottom-up approach, and not just focusing on it's just my way. You just have to be very inclusive. Just understand they're also working with people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different thinking and learning ways too, and not just focusing on one way.
Erica, you just summed up a 16-week course in about 7 seconds. It was beautifully done. But I want to go back to what you said first, because when you ask people what makes an effective leader, communication is one of the things that comes up all the time. And in our class, one of the things we reference is a framework from a woman by the name of Judith Glaser called conversational intelligence. And it actually is, she did research where she looked at the neuroscientific impact of how we communicate and relate to each other. And so we actually, when we are in person and talking to each other, we have a physiological impact and a neurological impact on those around us. And so by unpacking that framework, we not only understand what active listening is, but the impact and why it builds trust with other people. So just as a piece of how we cover that in this class. But I love that's what came up too, because communication is always important.
Yes, there's a whole segment of this course on humble inquiry, conversational intelligence, where we really unpack what is good communication that builds trust. So thank you, Erica. Thank you, Mal. This is exactly how our classes go.
And Amit just posted notes in the chat, so please share with us what you talked about in your rooms in the chat. That's usually how we continue these conversations. And then we're going to, for the sake of time, move to our next idea here.
No, we could do this all evening.
We really could. If they let us, we'd be here till like 10 o'clock.
No. We start this whole BATM 508 course. It is rooted in, as we have been saying, in the self. We take a personal development lens or perspective on leadership development. So we like to say who you are is how you lead. I've heard this phrase already during the session, how you show up. Well, who you are, meaning what is your worldview? What is your cultural background? What is your level of emotional intelligence? What are some of your beliefs? What are some of your reactions? Those who you are is how you show up in a leadership situation. So how well do you really know yourself? And for that question, we turn to the work of Tasha Eurich.
Love Tasha Eurich.
I know, we love
So
her
thoughtful.
book. We love her book called Insight. And the theory goes that great leadership starts with self-awareness, a keen and honest and accurate sense of self-awareness. So I always say, when people ask me, how do I start with leadership development? Where do I begin? And I always say, well, you've got to start with the self, like start here. Here's the starting point. And so we want to share with you a framework by Eurich in her book Insight that are the self-awareness archetypes. So Eurich holds that self-awareness really runs along two dimensions, an internal dimension and an external dimension. So you see those plotted there on the X and Y axes. And so we might be high in one or relatively low in another. And so just very quickly, I want to touch on what the 4 archetypes are. So if you're someone who believes that they might be high in internal self-awareness, you really, do a lot of what I might call navel gazing. You look on the inside. You're very much aware of your values and belief systems, but you don't do a whole lot of considering how you might be seen from the outside world, or low in external self-awareness. You might be called an introspector. If you are, on the other hand, someone who is low in internal self-awareness and low in external self-awareness, so you don't really spend a whole lot of time in this self-awareness endeavor, there's hope. Tasha Eurich calls these folks seekers, so lots of room to grow. You might be like I have been in my life, and I always tell Professor Luckman I'm a recovering pleaser. So a pleaser is someone who is relatively low in internal self-awareness, doesn't spend maybe enough time considering themselves, but spends a whole lot of time worrying about what other people think of them. Tasha Eurich calls these folks pleasers. This may be touching a nerve for some of you. I know it does me. And then there's up there in that top right-hand quadrant are folks who are known as aware. These are the high highs, high in internal and high in external. And just by way of the chat, what do you think the research shows in terms of what percentage of any given population is known as aware, or they're high in both internal and external self-awareness?
It's always interesting to see.
Okay.
Okay.
They caught. Yes. Yeah. All right, Adam.
All right. Look, that people know. They're
yeah,
there.
you know. We don't spend enough time on this stuff, and it's so critical. It's so fundamental to developing leadership skills, is knowing what the starting point is, getting really honest with what the starting point is. So yes, 10 to 15%, according to Eurich's research, are folks we might consider as being high on both or highly aware.
And if you would like to dig into this a little bit more, I'm dropping in the chat a link to what she calls her insight quiz. And we use this in our course. And we want to be so I saw someone asked about Myers-Briggs. When it comes to personality assessments or assessments like this, these are not clinical diagnoses. These are states of awareness. So talking about self-awareness, doing a quiz like this and figuring out where you sort of fit in this 4-quadrant framework, it's not meant to say like, oh, you're a people pleaser and you can never change, or you've become this way and it's how you are all the time. More often than not, it's capturing a moment in time. But that moment is important. It helps you to define the gaps that you have that you want to close. So share that in the chat. And that's a free and open use quiz. And we have asked for Tasha's permission for this, and she's always very excited to have more people take it because it helps her as well. So
yes, absolutely. And if you're interested in developing your self-awareness, there are 7 pillars, and those are values, like looking on the inside. Try to uncover what are your core values, your passions, aspirations, and fit with the environment. So the type of job or organization you're in now, does it fit with your strengths and weaknesses? And then to develop your external awareness, you are said to ask your loving critics for feedback, invite feedback, and invite feedback around what other people perceive are your patterns, your reactions, and your impact on other people. And for that, patterns and reactions and impact, a lot of that has to do with the way you show up in decision-making situations. So I want to turn next for us to talk about ways that we show up when we have to make decisions. What are some of our patterns and reactions?
So self-awareness is more than just knowing our values and how others perceive us. That is core to it. But when it comes right down to what you do, and this has come up in the definition of leadership on a daily basis, is you are making decisions. And often those decisions impact a lot of people. And also those decisions are often made under time constraints and people constraints and resource constraints. So paying attention to how we make decisions is actually a really important form of self-awareness. And so one of the frameworks, if you go ahead and go to the next slide, please, and thank you, that you may be familiar with comes from the work of Kahneman and Tversky. It is often called behavioral economics. And what they identified is that we use these heuristics or mental shortcuts that lead to biased decision-making. And so there's a whole bunch of different types of heuristics that lead to biases. And if you Google common heuristics in decision-making, you're going to get all kinds of information. But we wanted to highlight a few here that might tie to the way we interact with our teams and the way we lead. So I'm going to just bring up a few specific here off of this slide, and you can Google the other ones for more information. But here's a fun example of the anchoring bias. So there's an exercise that we will often do in class where we will ask every one of the students in class to write down, let's say, the last 3 numbers of your phone number. So for some people that's 111, for others it's 999, for others it's 467, but you get all of these different 3 number combinations. Then, aside from that, we hold up a really generic item, like a man's blue Oxford shirt, and we ask everybody in the class to guess how much that item is worth. And what you find is that there is a very strong and significant correlation between those numbers that they wrote down, which have nothing to do with the price of that item, and that item. So what we do is we get anchored on starting points. This is really important when it comes to negotiations. If you get anchored on a number, if you go in and you make the first offer, let's say it's a salary negotiation, and they're thinking, oh, we're going to offer 150K. And you go in and say, listen, I want at least 100. Well, you've just anchored yourself way far away from where they need to be. So here's a little negotiation tip. Never make a first offer unless you have lots and lots of information. If you know all of the information, then you can make a first offer to anchor somebody. But other than that, if you don't have enough information, don't anchor, because you don't know if you're anchoring at the right point and you will get stuck there. Another one is availability. What comes easily to mind counts more. If I asked you what kills more people every year in the US, I know that's really morbid, but it's a good example. Red balloons or shark attacks. Sharks, right? Because you hear the stories and they're visceral and they're terrifying, and it makes us not want to go toward the water. But actually, I'm sorry to say, children swallow a lot of balloons. So this is also my PSA for all of you. Please keep balloons away from small children. So when things are more easily available or we talk about them more, it's going to shift the way we make decisions. Confirmation bias, seeking data that validates your current beliefs. By the way we search Google is a great example of confirmation bias.
Oh, yes.
Does this headache mean I'm dying? Is going to give you results that says, yes, this headache means you're dying. And so thinking about how we phrase and word things is really important. Escalation of commitment. You dump a lot of money or time into something and it's hard to walk away. There's a great book out there by Annie Duke called Quit. And it is all about the research and science behind knowing when to walk away. And it's one of the most powerful books I've read in the past couple of years. Framing, if we frame something as a gain versus a loss, that impacts our connection to it. So if I say I'm going to give you $10, that is not as impactful as if I say I'm going to take away $10 from you. You can think about how this can impact your work life. I said I was going to do a couple and then I got on a roll here.
You get carried away. This is what we do.
Every time. And then representativeness, when we make decisions based on stereotypes. So if you have, let's say, 2 college graduates who came from the exact same program, but one dresses in a suit and the other is like super into yoga and mindfulness, and you ask which one's more likely to be a better lawyer, are likely to think of the person in the suit, even though the base rate that would suggest that these two people are equally likely to be good lawyers. But we use our stereotypes, those patterns that we see, to make decisions, and a lot of times those are not accurate. And then, of course, status quo. We like things the way they are. Who likes change? Nobody likes change. And so that's why we talk about resistance to change and understanding how to tap into that so that we can more gracefully navigate the changes that are constantly happening around us at all times. So all of this is to say, we have to know how we make decisions. Yes, Kari?
Yeah, I love that you just keyed on change, because when we think about leadership, and a lot of times we like to draw a distinction between leadership and management, right?
And I saw that in the chat too earlier.
Good,
yeah.
good. So leadership is fundamentally it's about change.
Yeah.
It's about being agile around change, having a vision for change. I was listening to a podcast earlier today. Amy Webb, she's a futurist, and one of the things she said that stuck with me today was that leaders don't need to be prepared for everything, but they need to be prepared for anything.
Ooh, that's a good point.
And I thought, that sort of reminds me of the difference between, management about being about control and trying to predict everything versus being in a state of agility and being prepared for anything in this kind of our uncertain, ambiguous world that we live in.
So that's the thing, is so much of what we face is uncertainty, and we get in our minds that we do know what's going to happen, and we know how to fix things, and we know what the solution is, and that can sometimes get us into trouble. So getting comfortable with navigating uncertainty is really important. And to do that, you have to know how you show up in the face of uncertainty.
Yes. So we're at the point in our session where we want to get some more feedback from you. We're going to launch the second poll. As you've been listening to some of this content around self-awareness, around decision-making, is there anything that has resonated with you that you might like to try to practice, let's say at work this week or in your community life? Increasing your internal self-awareness, increasing your external self-awareness by asking loving critics for some feedback, or maybe it's checking your biases in decision-making.
So there's a reason we asked this question. Someone had asked earlier to talk a little bit more about the class. So Professor Keating has mentioned that our class is rooted in personal development. And what we find, especially with such a diverse group of learners from around the world of various ages in various stages of career, some of whom want to be high-level leaders in big companies and others who are going to be running their own company and others who don't want to form a leadership position, is that you got to tie it to what's important to you. So even the assignments in our class are rooted in helping you practice and develop. So sometimes we know, well, actually, I'd say most of the time, we can agree on paper what good leadership is. It's enacting it that's hard. It's great to say you want to empower others until you show up and you're stressed and your boss is breathing down your neck and you have something that you need to deliver and everyone else doesn't know what to do and you don't have time to tell them. Then all of a sudden, being an empowering leader just out the window. So how do we make sure that we translate what we know to be good into practice? So that's why we're asking you. Leadership, we are constantly practicing. In fact, our colleague, Professor Denise Lewin-Lloyd, who is the third person who teaches with us in this course, is currently in a leadership development program of her own that's a part of our university for our university leaders. And so I love talking to her about going through leadership development while she's teaching a class on leadership development. We are constantly learning, and that's what we challenge all of our learners to do as well.
And I think that's why we can relate to all of you so well. Some of you going back to school, you're on the job, you're interested perhaps in enrolling in an iDegrees program or gaining a certificate. We are right alongside you. We're learning right alongside you. We have studied these topics. We've got content to share, but it's the stories that we share with each other, with all of you, about the practice of these skills that are easy to talk about and so much harder to practice on the daily.
And in addition to our live sessions, another place where we have these conversations is in our office hours. So each week in our program for each of the courses, the professors will hold office hours. We also have grading and TA teams that hold office hours for assignments. So there are lots of ways to interact with us. But ultimately, we've talked about this before, our individual office hours end up being like leadership and work therapy.
They do.
So,
true.
And that's where we hear such interesting stories from people. And I mean, we have learners who are brand new right out of undergrad in their first job. We have learners that are retired in their 60s and 70s and have decided to come back, and they end up being really insightful, and there's opportunities for mentorship and building relationships. So that gives you a little bit more of an idea about how you interact with us. There are lots of opportunities to interact with each other in our program. We use an online platform called Yellow Dig that is essentially like a virtual classroom. So since you aren't sitting in class together, there is a space for you to connect with each other and ask questions and share your stories and seek advice, which is always really interesting to read.
Yeah, that's a very social media interface kind of feeling. So, well, let's see what our learners have had to say.
Oh yeah, I
on the
forgot.
second
We launched a poll.
We launched a
Got
poll.
real excited again. So it looks like, thank you for sharing. Again, we have a pretty decent split, but reflecting on how I'm showing up as a leader, checking myself for bias, increasing internal and increasing external. I get the feeling we got a lot of pleasers out there who are ready. Yep, us too. Who are ready to do a little bit more work about how we show up, which I think it's really, really powerful.
Yeah, so for those folks who are wanting to check their bias, wanting to understand their external self-awareness, find some folks in your life, and these could be trusted colleagues at work, it could be people in your home life that will be honest enough to tell you the truth gently. But you have to ask. You have to ask for that kind of critical feedback. Feedback is a gift, of course, and having the courage to ask these trusted colleagues and friends for, the next time you're in a meeting, after the meeting, perhaps you could ask, did I get my point across in a way that was sensitive? Do you think folks understood me? What was my demeanor like? Go ahead and ask for that kind of feedback. That's a great starting point it's simple, but it's powerful, and it's a great starting point for building your leadership skills.
So you talked about loving critics. This is a concept from Tasha Eurich, and feedback is a gift, but not all feedback is created equal. So thinking about loving critics, those are people who care enough about you to be honest with you, but honest in a way that helps you grow. And that's not everybody. Sometimes people are going to give you feedback that isn't helpful or isn't developmental or is more about their own issues than your issues. So really tapping into and finding the people that can be those loving critics so you can ask those questions is in and of itself a really important step in self-awareness.
So speaking of folks like Tasha Eurich and others that we've referenced in this session, as we start to turn things to a close, and we'll open it up for some Q&A along with Kate. She'll be back. Here are some books that are recommended, just that we sort of referenced in this session. Susan David's Emotional Agility talks a lot about emotional intelligence as it relates to leadership. Of course, Tasha Eurich's book and her article in the Harvard Business Review on self-awareness. And then Kahneman and Tversky, we talked about some of the cognitive bias and decision making. So thinking fast and slow should be on your leadership library shelf, so to speak. So we always like to give some references for those of you who want to read around some of these topics and dig in a little bit more.
Can I make another suggestion that we don't have?
Yeah,
I put it in the chat.
Yes.
I just fairly recently finished reading Adam Grant's newest book, Hidden Potential, and some really powerful lessons in there about how we as individuals get in our own way and how systems get in the way of success. And so kind of thinking about it from these multiple levels is really interesting. So I will drop that in the chat, the title and name of that, and we'll include it on the slides as well.
What also happens in our live sessions often is that learners will start recommending to each other references, books, articles, podcasts. So feel free, if you'd like, to drop in the chat some of what you've been consuming and who do you turn to, whose voices do you listen to in the realm of leadership development. So go ahead and share that as well. We close out typically all of our live sessions. Imagine us. You can probably already tell by our energy here that we like to leave on an inspiring note. So we thought for this session we would wrap things up with some words from Sheryl Sandberg. We cannot change what we are not aware of. And once we are aware, we cannot help but change. So take these thoughts into the balance of your work week. We're going to stay around for some Q&A, and that can be about the content that we have shared during this session. That can be about GEES and the iDegrees programs. How do these things work? How does Coursera work with these live sessions? We're happy to take your questions, and Kate will toss it back over to you to help facilitate the Q&A.
Excellent. Well, that was just a great session. Thank you to both of you. I think the easiest way right now is if anybody has any questions, they can raise their hands. I didn't see any questions that we didn't really answer in the chat. So if there are specific questions, I think let's just go ahead and use the raise hand feature. We do have Oh, go ahead.
I did see one, Kate. Someone asked about, are there 2 instructors in every class? I think most of them have 2 instructors. The format will be a little different for each class. So sometimes you have a primary instructor and someone who's mostly in the chat. Sometimes you have 2 people going back and forth. They are all highly engaging. We have some of the most spectacular faculty members in this program. So Hayden Noel in marketing, Octay Orkan in accounting. We have some people, we have Haytor always plays his guitar. We've got a lot of really great and entertaining people behind each of these classes. So, and I also want to point out that these courses are not, I mean, we are here, we are leading live sessions, we create the content, but this takes a massive team of people to put on. Right now we are sitting in studio with 2 separate folks. We've got multiple folks online who are supporting us, and so we get to work as part of a team, which is amazing.
Yes, that's our teamwork fix.
Yes.
I saw a question earlier in the chat about what projects are part of a leadership class. So we could talk about our 2 major assignments.
Sure. Which one you want to do? You take one, I'll take one.
I'll talk about what we call the leadership lab assignment, because leadership at its core is social science. We use social science theory and frameworks to help understand the concept and help you practice it. So one of the key assignments in the course is a leadership lab, where we ask you to identify a leadership growth area at the very beginning of the course. Where do you want to get better? And what is the lab, so to speak, or what is the context that you want to practice or experiment with some new ideas in? For most people, it's in the workplace. It could be in another context in the community. But what are you learning in the course? Do you want to try out and then test some of what you're trying? So we sort of ask you to set up an experiment and test it out at work and reflect on that and tell us how it went, gather data on how it went, reflect on that, and then ultimately in the 4th part, it's a scaffolded milestone assignment. In the 4th part, you write up a short and a long-term leadership development plan for yourself. So again, it's not homework for us. These aren't just problems or problem sets that will disappear or evaporate. These are tools for your growth well beyond the scope of this course.
And that is an individual assignment. So for our course, we have that. And then the flip side of that is a group assignment. So I saw a lot of questions around group and team assignments. This is a business school program. You're always going to have a group assignment probably in every class. And there is a big mechanism behind the scenes that works to create groups where you're in the same time zone and you have shared interests and things like that. So our group assignment, our team assignment, is a simulation, and it's actually a really cool simulation that was written in part by Amy Edmondson, who is coined the idea of psychological safety, and who actually just wrote a really great book on how to fail effectively, which I highly recommend. And so in this team simulation, you get together with 5 or 6 other people, and you climb Mount Everest together. And through this experience, you have different roles, you get different information. There's conflict. There are different perspectives, and so you have to navigate this space together using the tools of what you've learned in the class. And it is, generally speaking, a really enjoyable experience.
Highlight of the course is that Mount Everest climb with your team. So.
Yes, and so I saw the content that we do. So if we do 2 or 3 live sessions a day, yes, it's the same. So that is the 2 or 3 live sessions are offered to cover all of the time zones and to make sure that anybody who would like to watch it live can. They are also recorded, and you can watch the live sessions recorded as well.
Right. Any other questions?
Let's see here. I lost track. There were lots of things coming up. I saw a question about what we had learned.
And you can also raise your hand. We've got just a couple of more minutes before we need to close out. So if anyone would like to voice in.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, good.
What has been your biggest surprise around leadership as empowerment?
Oh, all right. And we have a hand.
Oh, we do have
couple
let's
of
go
hand
hand.
raised,
Let's do the
just
hand.
so you
Jennifer,
know.
you're up first.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for this class and all the book recommendations. My question is, how is your courses on Coursera different from the actual graduate course? So, like, if I go to Coursera and just take a course as a member, your course as a Coursera member versus a graduate student with the university.
Great question. It's like someone said, hey, Jennifer, ask this really core question, because I bet a lot of people are wondering. So thank you for that. So the Coursera MOOCs for all of our courses are the foundation for any of the courses, whether you are doing a certificate or a graduate program. So you can take them completely independently through Coursera, but if you are registered as a graduate student or a certificate student, you're going to use that. Kind of think of it as like the textbook of the course. It's sort of the foundation of the course. And then, so that is one piece. Then on our Canvas interface, which is our learning management system, that is where you will get degree specific assignments, your group assignments, your individual assignments, access to live sessions, access to office hours. So think of Coursera, it can be done entirely independently on the Coursera platform, but in any of our certificate or degree programs, it acts as like the foundation, and then everything else builds on top of that. And they're drawn together, right? So we use our Coursera content to build our assignments and our live sessions. Thank you, Jennifer. Annika.
Hi. So I'm a seventh grader, and I wanted to know if it's possible for me to do this course.
This is my favorite question I've ever
This is
gotten.
beautiful.
Thank you for joining us. You are curious and young, and you are setting a great example. You are already a leader. You are a leader for everybody on this call, and I'm so happy. So I actually don't.
You did
The
Coursera.
for sure.
Coursera.
Yes, the
Yes.
Coursera course is open. Absolutely, and we encourage you to, if you do decide to follow that, reach out to us and let
Yes.
us know what you have learned and how you are applying it.
Thank you for
Yeah.
being here. That's fantastic. How did you know to come here?
I actually got an email from Coursera, so I've done a few courses on there before this.
And there's the
Fantastic.
future of leadership,
That is
folks, right there.
awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us and for having the courage and the curiosity to ask that question.
Thank you.
That's
I know.
amazing.
I know, right?
Yes.
Oh, a leader here today. I love it. That's fantastic. Let's see, Amit.
Hi there. Hey, Kari and Elizabeth. Thanks for the session. I think I was the one who had posted that question that you had brought up a little bit around what has been your biggest surprise around leadership as empowerment. I just thought I'd verbalize that and get your thoughts around that.
Wonderful. It's great to hear your voice and see
It
your
is.
face.
I'm glad you voiced in. Thank you, Amit. I saw that question pop up in the chat, and I started thinking about it as we were rolling along here. And I had just a kind of a quick example from my day. As we said earlier, we have to think and practice these things on the daily,
Yeah.
and it's hard. So I teach. We both teach in the undergraduate space, and today was the last day of class for my class, my undergraduate class, and I work with these undergraduate teaching assistants. And because I teach leadership and I'm familiar with leadership theory, I take to heart this idea of empowering these undergraduate TAs. And I think it's been the most surprising thing to sort of release. A lot of times when we're the leader, especially if you think of yourself as a teacher or professor, you have to keep a tight control on things. And that ultimately is not sustainable. It will fall apart. The folks won't continue to follow you. But these undergraduate TAs, because I empower them to make decisions in the classroom, they tell me that they love the experience, and it can make you nervous at first to empower others and give up that control.
So letting go a little bit
Let
control.
go
There,
of
look
the
at
control,
you.
but I watch them, and it's what Jessica said before. I'm creating other leaders when I engage in the idea of empowerment. So
I love that. So actually, the thing that came up for me is, we've all of us can think about a time we've worked on a team. I kind of referenced this earlier, where someone wasn't contributing, right? Ugh, the lazy teammate. They're like not showing up, or they're not contributing, or they're not doing what they're supposed to. And I was, I think, fairly young when I finally figured this out, but I am consistently surprised by it. Is more often than not, actually, that person isn't lazy, and it's not that they're disengaged. Either I'm doing too much, like I'm stepping on their toes and preventing them from actually feeling empowered, or they have something going on that's distracting them. And so I often raise this especially with undergrads, and they're like, no, they're just lazy teammates, right?
Oh, no.
And then I'm like, no, but you're actually causing it to some extent, because you're the person that is on time and getting everything done and wants it done early. And so by showing up that way, even though that can be really beneficial in parts of our lives, it also can shut other people down. So I think about that a lot. I think it's related to the example you gave.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that goes to the fundamental attribution error. And add another book to your bookshelf. It's Devin Price, I think. There's no such thing as laziness. I may be messing the title up. But there's another reference that just sort of came to my attention the other day.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
All right, we have a couple of hand raises. Kate, do you want to?
I think we have time for maybe one more question, and then we'll probably wrap up.
Okay, Juan.
Yes, hello. Could you hear me?
Hi.
Yes.
Hi there.
Okay. I just want to comment that I did the Coursera specialization, and I really loved your classes. Are really good. The concepts, the approach that you give. So I encourage all the people here to take your classes.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah,
can we push back a little bit and add? So you did the whole specialization, right? So
Yes.
Did you do okay?
The 7 course.
So
Wow.
Could you speak a bit about the differences in the different classes that you take within that specialization? So what did you take away from the fact that you took our class and then Mike Bednar's class and Deepak's class?
Well, are all really different, but I like the different concepts and the ways of learning that you have. So I really enjoyed all the specializations. So I'm really happy with that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for encouraging others.
Thank you for coming to this
Yes.
session. This is a wonderful way to sort of reflect on what you have learned. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for your questions and your engagement and your smiling faces. And Professor Keating, thank you.
Yeah,
Always a
it's
pleasure.
great
Always
to
a
be together
pleasure
with you. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kate. We'll turn it back over to you.
All right. Well, thank you for all those amazing questions and comments that we had in the chat as well. So thank you both, Professor Keating and Luckman. This was just a really great session on empowerment and leading with empowerment. And I hope everyone enjoyed this live class experience, which it seemed like everyone did. If you're interested in applying to one of our credentials that we offer, May 2nd is coming up as our priority 1 deadline to apply to the IMBA, IMSA, or the IMSM programs for a fall start in August or October. So feel free to scan this QR code that you see on your screen right now if you'd like an admission counselor to reach out to you in the next couple of days. We'd love to meet with you, discuss your career and your goals, and see how Geese Business can help you reach those professional goals. So you can also email us at geeseonline@illinois.edu. And I think that's it. This was a great evening, and I hope everyone has a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are joining from. So everyone have a good evening.